Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me is my guy, Kyle Yates. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80 and at KyleYNFL. Yates, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Went out and voted earlier today and listened to Hamilton the entire way to and from. So, you know, you got to get that in there as you're going to vote. So, no, but I'm ready to talk some football here today, man.
Yeah, me too. And again, by the time you're listening to this, you know, I don't even know if the polls are going to be closed or anything like that. Hope everybody was able to make it out and vote. And I hope everybody just goes out and vote because everybody should have their voice heard. And our voices are going to be heard today. And it's just us. No guest today. Just me and Yates. It's going to be a party.
Dan and Kyle in the morning.
Dan and Kyle in the quasi-morning. Yep. A little later than what we usually do it. But anyway, we got a great show for you today. You know what our Tuesday show is. It's our rest of season trades, buy low, sell high, all that sort of stuff. A lot of crazy moving parts this week. But first, we're going to be doing some trade talk, as I mentioned. So let's make sure to remind you about our trade analyzer over at My Playbook. You want to see whether or not a trade helps your team? That's great. The trade analyzer will do that. Do you want to view your power rankings in your league before and after the trade? The trade analyzer is going to do that too. Do you want support for uneven trades or trading draft picks in dynasty leagues? The trade analyzer is going to do that too. It's available at My Playbook along with a million other tools. Just go to fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Yes, we start almost every Tuesday show with looking at the Monday night game, and we do have a lot of things to break down there. But first, right before we started recording, we got official word that Jamaal Williams is out for Thursday night's game against the 49ers. Now, first of all, I assume that they are keeping this on Thursday night, which seems crazy to me that they're not just pushing it back to Sunday or Monday, but apparently it's going on Thursday. So you've got Jamaal Williams out. You've got A.J. Dillon out. You've got Aaron Jones, a big question mark right now. And again, I don't think he practiced at all last week, so it seems crazy that he would be able to play in this game. I mean, this isn't a waiver wire show, and you and I are going to do a waiver wire live stream in like an hour, but are you looking at Dexter Williams or Tyler Ervin as somebody to go out and pick up right now?
I mean, so I haven't sat down and done my rankings for this week, but my goodness, I really do not want to play either of these guys if I can avoid it. But at the same time, we're talking about these running backs that you might be forced into picking up, Tyler Ervin or Dexter Williams. As to which one, no clue. You know, like who's going to get the ball? We have no idea who is going to be this running back. And then there's even the potential that Aaron Jones guts it through because 2 weeks ago, it was saying that Aaron Jones was like, I'm good to play. Like, I want to play. I'm pushing to play. But Green Bay was the one that was holding him back and holding him out. So there's a possibility that Aaron Jones decides to, you know, and Green Bay says, all right, Aaron Jones will let you suit up on the short week. So at that point, then any waiver bid that you put in on, you know, Tyler Ervin or Dexter Williams will just be wasted.
Yeah, so would you prefer right now, let's say we don't have any further information on this at all, would you prefer to pick up somebody like, let's say, Gus Edwards for this week against the Colts or Jordan Wilkins against the Ravens, or would you prefer to pick up one of the Green Bay guys?
I would 100% prefer to pick up Gus Edwards. I'm a little bit off on Jordan Wilkins. I know that you guys talked about him yesterday on the Waiver Wire podcast.
Yeah, why weren't you on that podcast, man? So
you didn't want me because you and Tags are having a BFF session. You won't let me in. Won't let me in.
Not me.
Whatever. Anyway, no, with Jordan Wilkins, I'm not looking his way particularly. So I think Gus Edwards, though, has a guaranteed role. It's a tough matchup, but yet Pittsburgh was a tough matchup, and he still succeeded. Yep. So, and he's going to be the goal line back. So, yeah, I'll go with Gus Edwards clearly above these other two Green Bay running backs.
I'm with you, and hopefully fantasy managers can get more information before they actually have to put in their claims, which should either be tonight or hopefully PSA, move your waiver pickups to Wednesday nights. I have that in a couple of leagues. It's much better. Just get as much information as you possibly can. All right, let's get into last night's game, which was a surprisingly close affair. The Bucs 25, the Giants 23. You know where we're starting, Yates. We are starting at 8:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night when you wrote a message to me and Tags and Slack that just said, bye, Rojo. And that was right after his fumble. He was then outsnapped on the game overall by Leonard Fournette. 51 snaps to 17 snaps. We were talking about it right before we started recording. I believe Rojo, I haven't broken it down yet. I believe Rojo did come in for a series in the second half. I don't think he saw a single series in the first half after that fumble. And then I believe I saw him at one series in the second half, and that was it. 7 carries for 23 yards plus 4 catches for 23 yards. Fournette, 15 for 52 plus 3 for 19. Not overly impressive or anything like that, but he didn't fumble, so that's good. What are we doing with this backfield? Kyle Yates, explain it to me and fantasy managers out there.
Man, I think that we are done with Ronald Jones. I mean, and you and I talked about it several weeks ago, saying, like, I think he's earned a long enough leash, because you look at him, the way that he's running, like, fantastic runner in between the tackles, was running with, I mean, just power and aggression, was just looking great. But then he always had this kind of hanging over the back of his head, or over this back of his shoulder, that he can't catch. Like, he's a liability in the receiving game. So, I mean, at this point, Leonard Fournette offers more versatility. He offers more security. Now, I think that Ronald Jones, at this point, we can't trust him. We cannot trust Ronald Jones in our starting lineups. I think Leonard Fournette gets a significant boost up. Ronald Jones is plummeting down my rankings.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, it's either hanging over his head or on the back of his shoulder.
Yep.
Either one. You kind of went both ways right there. Mm-hmm. Right. It is mind-boggling to me. And look, I just think it's bad coaching. Rojo has not. Fournette looks fine. You want to go with Fournette? Go with Fournette. But the idea that you're going to do it because Rojo, who I don't believe had fumbled all season long, had this very strange play where the ball got tipped and he got low and was then kind of getting up and then happened to fumble. And then you're like, I'm sorry, you're not going to see the field again, is ridiculous to me. And I do think that it underscores that there is no safety in this backfield. If that happens to Leonard Fournette, we might not see Leonard Fournette in the game for that. It's something where if you're starting either one of these guys, you have absolutely no safety. You have to legitimately be watching and saying, man, I hope you don't miss a blitz pickup. I hope you don't fumble or drop a pass. Otherwise, I may not see you again. So I agree. As of right now, I've got to go with Fournette. But, man, I'm not going to feel comfortable starting either one of these guys ever, no matter what, because you can't earn a long enough leash.
Right.
Rojo had looked great for several weeks, and we thought he was out of it, and it's not. I'm just mad. I don't even have Rojo on any teams, but I'm still angry. All right, so let's get to the passing game here. Mike Evans, you had no Chris Godwin here. You had no Antonio Brown. A beautiful touchdown catch, as he often is able to do. 7 targets, 5 catches, 55 yards and touchdown. Not a crazy game. I mean, Tom Brady didn't look that great in this game. So we don't know exactly what the deal is with Godwin at this point, because originally you said, oh, there's optimism that he could be back next week, I believe, against the Saints, and I think there still is. But there was also a report that he was originally given a time frame of 4 to 6 weeks. So we don't even know if he's coming back next week or in the foreseeable future. Antonio Brown, though, we do know is going to be back next week. They're raving about him in practice. So you've been down on Mike Evans, for sure. You were starting to fade him long before it was cool to fade Mike Evans. Are you still fading him? Are you bumping him up at all now? What are you doing with him?
No, I'm fading him. I mean, when you look at this offense now, Rob Gronkowski, I do expect Chris Godwin, right now, I expect him to be back on the field next week, even though, that report was really interesting of 4 to 6 weeks. Now he's week to week. So, I mean, I'm going off of what I've heard, that he's going to be back on the field next week against the Saints. And then you have Antonio Brown joining this team. And even if Chris Godwin isn't in the lineup, you know that Tom Brady is going to be looking Antonio Brown's way. So Evans just has a cap on his ceiling, right? Like there's no path for him to be viewed as a top 12 wide receiver now when you have 2 superstars coming back into the lineup of Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown. So assuming that Antonio Brown is, the player that he was when he exited the league. So, man, I just think that Mike Evans, we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but if you have the opportunity, man, sell high.
All right, so what does sell high mean for you? Like, give me do you have a number for your rest of the season rankings where he actually ranks for you?
So I haven't taken into account yet. He was falling down, but then he moved back up because of Godwin being out. So he's right now at 27 for me, and I expect that he's going to move further down. Like, if you can get someone Juju Smith-Schuster's in this range, like maybe Justin Jefferson.
What's fine, you can get higher. I'm telling you, man. Like, there are people, and we talked last week with Kate Modric, who was basically like, I'd drop him. If I can't trade him, I would drop him and let somebody spend all their fab on him. That's extreme, again, but that's fine. But I think you can trade him for like a very solid wide receiver too at this point. I really, really do, because of all the touchdowns, because of the uncertainty with Godwin. So you're basically saying if you can get wide receiver 2 or better value, you just do that without question, right?
Oh yeah, one of these receivers that comes with less uncertainty, right? Less question marks. That I don't have to worry about it. If I can get Justin Jefferson, again, it comes with a question mark. What happens if Minnesota throws the ball only 14 times in a game? But how many times is that going to happen? So Justin Jefferson's going to be back to utilize, and there might be some fantasy managers that are saying, I'm off on Justin Jefferson. So go get anyone that doesn't have these types of question marks, just sell high. Get Mike Evans off your team.
I will say that Justin Jefferson and slightly Adam Thielen did move a little bit down my rest of season rankings, but I also do think that they're buy lows because I really do think that people are going to look at this and be like, that game was horribly windy and they were running the ball all day long. They just didn't need to throw. That's not going to be the case every single game, especially as we talked about with like an absent secondary going forward. They're going to give up quite a few points going forward. And meanwhile, Gronk, again, another touchdown, 41 yards, 4 catches, locked in as a tight end 1 for you at this point, right?
Correct. Yep.
All right, let's go to the Giants here. I'm just going to say that I watched this game, pretty closely as it was going on. Darius Slayton could have had like 10 catches for 250 yards if Daniel Jones ever looked up and saw him streaking past the entire Bucs secondary. Instead, Jones does throw 2 touchdown passes, 1 to Dion Lewis, 1 to Golden Tate, both beautiful catches, by the way, and throws. Sterling Shepard, meanwhile, 10 targets, 8 catches, 74 yards. Evan Ingram, 10 targets, 5 catches, 61 yards. He has 1 rush attempt for 9 yards. And Slayton, 9 targets, 5 catches, 56 yards. Does anything that happened in this game, just on the pass catchers, change your opinion on any of the pass catchers, Ingram, Slayton, or Shepard?
I mean, Ingram maybe bumps up slightly because of his target volume, and you're wanting that at the tight end position. But I mean, if you're looking at this offense, still is not great. And so if you're looking at some of these guys, like, I mean, Sterling Shepard, we talked about it on maybe the Friday podcast, where I was like, I have Sterling Shepard as a top 30 receiver. I don't feel great about it. But just based on the projections and the logic, it said Sterling Shepard should be viewed this way. But based on the offense, I just don't feel confident in him. So until he, God forbid, gets injured again, that's just his injury history. Like, I think we need to view Sterling Shepard as a safe wide receiver 3 every single week. Darius Slayton does come with the boom potential. This is a very tough matchup. So for him to produce even as much as he did was impressive. So in some plus matchups, you can roll out Darius Slayton as a boomer bust wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 2. And Sterling Shepard just kind of needs to be viewed as a safe wide receiver 3 moving forward.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. I think that that's basically where they are. You can roll these guys out each and every week if you need to. It's not going to be exciting. It could have been in this game had Daniel Jones looked up for Slayton, but I agree. If you're going to see them getting, 8, 10 targets a game, yeah, that's guys you can start out each and every week, even if you're not all that excited to do it. Meanwhile, in the running game, Tags was yelling at me because I guess I influenced his ranking of Wayne Gallman. I'm sorry, but he had just 32 snaps. He did find the end zone, but Alfred Morris.
I looked up halfway through the game. I was like, is that Alfred Morris? When did that happen?
That's right. He's still here. 21 snaps, baby. So did Dion Lewis. Look, 12 for 44 and the TD for Gallman. Not at all. I mean, forget about the TD. 12 for 44 is not terrible when you are 12 touches for 44 yards when you are considering it's the Bucs who are very good against the run. 8 for 28 for Morris. Dion Lewis, 2 catches for 8 yards and the beautiful touchdown. I don't know, man. Maybe Devonta Freeman comes back. Maybe he doesn't. Do you want to roster and or start ever any Giants running back?
If Freeman's healthy, I'll start him, but otherwise just stay far away.
Yeah, I don't really want anybody. Get rid of them all. Get to another situation where you can pull your hair out. All right, let's get to most traded players here. Everybody knows the deal by now. I talk about my playbook. You can import your team. I get to see the most traded players in every league that is imported into my playbook, and it's really interesting. Then I also like to do, we're going to have a lot of this, just me and Yates today, so we can just go to town on this one. Popular searches in our Who Should I Trade tool. That is not even part of my playbook. Just fantasypros.com/NFL/trade. You will see the most popular searched for players and trades. Again, this is just through Sunday through today. So most traded players. So this is from since this week ended. You know who the most traded player is. It's a guy who we have talked about forever. It is Ezekiel Elliott, by far the most traded players. You were selling him last week, Yates. You've been selling him, again, like Mike Evans, before it was cool to do so. 20 touches, 73 yards this past game. Week before, 13 touches for 51 yards. Week before, 20 for 80. Pittsburgh is next. Then a bye. Washington, Minnesota, Washington, then Baltimore. Andy Dalton should be back this week. It sounds like he's probably going to clear concussion protocol. So, Fady McFadison, how much are you fading Ezekiel Elliott at this point going forward?
He's a mid-range RB2. Just one of these guys that I'm not plummeting him all the way down to, outside my top 24 running backs, but yet when you're looking at some of these other guys, I mean, he lands at, I think, RB15 in my rest of season rankings, so he's still someone that you can roll out, but he's not a top 5 lock anymore.
All right, we're going to put you to the test right now because there are so many searches for who should I trade Ezekiel Elliott for. So we're gonna start high, and then we're gonna get to probably around the range. But because people, especially, we have the mailbag where people respond to us on Twitter, give trade questions. It was like 40% were Zeke for this. So let's get into it. I'm not even gonna ask you Zeke for Dalvin Cook because I know the answer to that one.
My word,
this is and to be fair, that might have been maybe that was a Sunday one, perhaps, where before everything happened, you didn't know if Dalvin Cook was healthy. Zeke or Josh Jacobs going forward?
Josh Jacobs.
Zeke or James Conner?
James Conner.
Zeke or Nick Chubb?
Assuming that he comes back after their bye, I'll take Nick Chubb.
You don't have the luxury of waiting. You have to make your decision right now. Zeke or Nick Chubb with what information you have, which is the early report that he should be back in week 10, but not rock solid.
If I can survive this week without Zeke, I'll take Nick Chubb.
How about Zeke or Joe Mixon?
Joe Mixon.
Zeke or Austin Eckler?
Oh, man, that one's a little bit more difficult because I have not heard anything on Austin Eckler. And
I think that's a bad sign. Yes.
Yeah, that's
I really do.
Not a good sign for Austin Eckler coming back anytime soon. So I'll take Zeke in that situation.
I agree with you on that one. Zeke or Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
I'll take Zeke there.
That is so close for me. I think I'll take Zeke as well. Zeke or David Johnson?
I'll still take Zeke. They're both of these boring volume, running backs. I'll take Zeke there.
How about Zeke or Leonard Fournette?
I will still take Zeke, but that's closer than it was a couple weeks ago.
All right, let's get out of the running back for running back. Let's go to running back to other positions that have also been searched for excessively in our trade tool. Travis Kelce or Zeke?
Travis Kelce.
Julio Jones or Zeke?
Julio.
Michael Thomas or Zeke?
Michael Thomas.
Ready for your nightmare? Mike Evans or Zeke?
Ready for my nightmare. That
is your nightmare. You're like, no, I don't want either one.
Neither. No, I'll take Zeke in that situation.
Yeah, so will I'm with you on the answer to all those. By the way, I just saw a tweet from Rappaport that basically said that Aaron Jones, there's pessimism that he will be back on Thursday. So get ready for some craziness. Devontae Adams may see 700 targets in that game. Let's go to another most traded player, Myles Gaskin. So not exciting. 21 touches, 63 yards. He does get the score. It was a tough matchup with the Rams, but I feel like there probably isn't optimism about this offense now with Tua taking over versus what it looked like with Fitzpatrick. Now, we did dominate the snaps. I mean, Matt Breida saw just 8 snaps in this game, so still what we liked. And Jordan Howard was inactive, so you know that Gaskin is going to get the goal line work. But how are you viewing Myles Gaskin now with the change to Tua rest of season?
Yeah, he gets a downgrade as opposed to what we saw with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I have Myles Gaskin at 17 in my rest of season running back rankings. I have Ezekiel Elliott at 14.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I have Gaskin a little lower, though I always do take a close look after this because I do the trade article. That's when I really dive into my rest of season rankings. So I'm right now at 21st. The Cardinals, Chargers, Broncos, Jets coming up. Not the worst schedule, but not a great schedule going forward. So let me put you to the test here on a couple of guys. Again, these are just searches that are happening in our trade tool, fantasypros.com/NFL/trade, which you can go to, and you can see if you're looking at trading a player, let me see where his value is. You can get a good sense of it by the players who are being searched for in this. So Myles Gaskin or Antonio Gibson?
Those guys are back-to-back in my rankings. I will take Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, I have Gibson a couple of spots ahead, but that's right. That's around where it is. Now, Myles Gaskin or James Conner?
James Conner by a mile.
Where has James Conner moved in your rest of season rankings?
He's at 7 for me.
Yeah, he's at 6 right now for me. So I agree. I think I do want to put that out there because I don't think that fantasy managers view him that way. And again, he didn't have he scored a touchdown, didn't have a great game, but it was against Baltimore. Gets Dallas.
Yeah, exactly.
Gets Dallas this week.
Yep.
If you can buy him low in any way, I would do so, certainly. How about Myles Gaskin or Raheem Mostert?
Myles Gaskin. I have no idea when or if Raheem Mostert's coming back.
Yeah, I think the philosophy I go by is do not trade for injured players.
Correct.
Unless you know that they're about to come back.
Yeah, and even let's talk about San Francisco really quick. Like, I mean, are they just going to fold right now? Yeah. They have once they put Garoppolo and Kittle on IR, they'll have $80 million in cap on IR and salary cap on IR this year.
And putting aside how injured they are, that division is really tough.
Right.
Really, really tough. Right? With the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Cardinals, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to find your way out of this. So I agree. This could be a time where they just kind of fold the tents. It's a really good point. Let's go to two guys here who are also two of the most searched for guys who are very, very close for me with Gaskin. Gaskin or David Montgomery?
I'll take David Montgomery.
Yeah. I have Montgomery one spot higher. How about Gaskin or Todd Gurley?
I'll take Gaskin there. I don't want Gurley.
Yeah, Gurley is tough. This is the sell high sort of part for Gurley because the meaty part of the schedule is ending. And again, his value is buoyed by his touchdowns, which I think is eight rushing touchdowns. All right, let's go receiver here because these are, again, the people are trading him, not just one for one running backs. Gaskin or Robert Woods?
I will take Robert Woods there.
I assume then that you will also take Robby Anderson, who's the next most searched.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. How about DJ Moore or Gaskin?
I'll take Gaskin there.
How about Gaskin or Justin Jefferson?
Justin Jefferson.
I'll take Gaskin for that one. And Gaskin or Cooper Kupp?
Based on what we saw from Cooper Kupp this past week, 21 targets?
Yeah. I think you can lock that in going forward. And
yeah, exactly. Targets, I'll build it into my projection article. I'll take Gaskin there, but that is super
I think
close.
that's fair. I think for me, when you're at Robert Woods, even Robby Anderson, or
they're all super close. Yeah,
that's all fair value. That's the range. Mm-hmm. I will lean running back almost always because, again, I say this all the time, man. We talk about this on Waiver Wire. Like, I've been joking. I have a partner in one of my leagues. Like, it's like our favorite league, and I was just waiting. We had to fill a wide receiver spot, and I was just waiting because I knew the guy who I was going to pick up on Sunday morning. It was a guy who nobody else was going to pick up, and it was going to be Kendrick Bourne because it was an obvious guy who I think in a half PPR league was going to be able to get you 10 points, no problem. Guys like that are always out there. So for me, I'll always take the running back over a wide receiver when the value is close. But let's go to a wide receiver, and it's Chase Claypool, another guy who is being traded constantly. 9 targets, 5 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown. He did lose a fumble in the game, but he, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Deontay Johnson, who did leave briefly but came back, all played exactly 41 snaps. Mm-hmm. Claypool has 6 touchdowns in his last 4 games. They've got Dallas, they've got Cincinnati, they've got Jacksonville coming up. How do you feel about Chase Claypool going forward?
He's a low-end wide receiver 3 for me. That comes with ridiculous upside every single week. So, but he does come with a little bit of a lower floor, which is why I have him ranked as a low-end wide receiver 3. So he's one of those guys that you can plug in, kind of in a Darius Slayton mold, but in a better offense. If that makes sense. So I think you can plug in Chase Claypool, but man, these. With Deontay Johnson, it's hard for me to figure out what the heck to do with this wide receiver core. Because with Deontay Johnson leaving, okay, did that play a role in how many targets went Chase Claypool's way versus going Deontay Johnson's way? Because we know that when Johnson's healthy and he's on the field, he's going to be the clear target leader. At least I think we know that. So I think I still have Deontay Johnson ahead of these other 2 wide receivers. I have Deontay Johnson at 24 in my rest of the season rankings, Juju at 29, and Claypool at 36.
Okay, yeah, I'm legitimately throwing my hands up, which is exactly what you want from a fantasy analyst, right? Just being like, I don't really know here at this point. Right now, Deontay Johnson is 27, Juju is 30, I think Claypool is 31st. I'm like, whatever. Start them all as wide receiver 3s. I don't have a strong feeling. If you were like, I want to trade one for the other, I'd be like, great. They're all pretty much the same value, at least as far as I look at it. So let's put a couple of most searched for trades here. Chase Claypool or Jerry Jeudy going forward?
I'll take Claypool there.
Yeah, I will too. Although, it was nice to see Jeudy. I realized Tim Patrick was out. It was really nice to see those 10 targets. I really hope they involve him a lot more because, man, just watching him run a route is just awesome. Claypool or, again, this is an injured player, and he's going to be out this week. So Claypool or Deebo Samuel going forward?
Claypool.
How about Claypool or Darius Slayton?
I'll take Claypool. I have him at 36. I have Slayton at 39.
And how about Claypool or, and again, this is tough because he's injured, I guess, Jamison Crowder?
If we knew that Jamison Crowder was going to be back this week, I would take Crowder, but we don't have that clarity, so I'll go Claypool there.
Yeah, right now I have Claypool slightly ahead as well. Let's go cross position. More searched for trades, Claypool or J.K. Dobbins?
I will take Claypool because of his long-term value. If I want to swing for the fences and hope that J.K. Dobbins takes over this backfield, which based on what we've seen, that should be what happens, right? But I think that once Ingram comes back, he's going to continue to see work in this backfield. You don't just sit Mark Ingram at this point of his career. So even though that's probably what you should do. So I think if I want to swing for the fences and I can, I have Claypool as the 4th or 5th wide receiver on my roster, I'm fine making that trade.
Claypool or Justin Jackson?
I'll take Claypool because, again, more long-term viability.
Claypool or either Bucs running back?
I'll take Leonard Fournette.
Okay. Yeah, both are the most searched for. So, yeah, I mean, that's about what he is. Claypool's really tough because I think the one thing that you can probably expect is that there are going to be bust games. This is not a guy probably like a Darius Slayton or a Sterling Shepard who may not match the ceiling that Claypool has, but certainly offers you a higher week-to-week floor. I think there are going to be games where, if Deontay Johnson is fully healthy and Juju's there, that Claypool's just not going to have as big of a role. At that point, I still think, though, that you want him on your roster because I do think the boom games are going to be really boom. Let's get to our last guy here. This is a guy that fantasy managers have no idea what to do with if our Twitter feed is at all indicative, and that's Jonathan Taylor. A terrible game in what was supposed to be his coming out party. 11 for 22, plus 2 for 9 through the air. Outplayed by Jordan Wilkins, who we mentioned earlier. He was way outsnapped. Now there is talk of an ankle injury. I don't know whether or not, I haven't seen the details of it, if it's supposed to be something that he had been nursing coming in, even off the bye week, or whether he sustained it in-game. You couldn't really tell because Jonathan Taylor has not looked particularly effective throughout this season. He just talks about it all the time. So Baltimore is next. He's going to be in our Faller section, at least mine, in terms of running back. So I moved down this week, of course. What do you do here if you roster Jonathan Taylor? I mean, do you, or do you look to acquire him? I mean, how do you value him rest of season?
Yeah, I've got him just behind Ezekiel Elliott and just above Clyde Edwards-Helaire at RB15. So I'm not hitting the panic button completely, right? Based on this one game, I'm not going to drop it or hit the panic button and drop him, outside my top 24 running backs or anything like that. I'm going to stay measured. But man, I mean, it's super concerning because this was the spot for him to go off. And you've talked about it, and it's so frustrating because based on when you watch the tape of Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, the way that he wore down defenses was getting the ball 20 to 30 times in a game, right? And just keeping him in. You would see it was like Jack Cohn was their third down running back who would come in occasionally, but Jonathan Taylor would get consistent drives. He would get 20 to 30 carries a game, and then once he wore down a defense, that's when he was able to break away a big play and just put away the game. And what Indianapolis is doing is they're putting him in for 2 plays and then bringing him out, and you're putting in Nyheim Hines or Jordan Wilkins or what. And a lot of it can be because he's been ineffective, but yet that's the way that he's being utilized by this coaching staff is very frustrating. And so we can sit here and we can argue about that and nitpick it, but we have to go with what's actually happening. So I think with Jonathan Taylor, he certainly needs to be downgraded based in our rankings, based on what we're seeing on the field, based on the usage of Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines. I'm not going to overreact, though, on this one game with Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines, though, because up to this point of the season, they had been just as ineffective, if not more, than Jonathan Taylor. So the matchup here against Detroit, again, we should have seen Jonathan Taylor go off. Not going to discount that. But that's why I'm not rushing out to pick up Jordan Wilkins, because, again, he had been very ineffective, and he just had a great matchup against Detroit. Now he goes up against Baltimore and all these. So I'll stop talking here in a second.
No. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. You had a pause, so I was like, wait, am I
right? No,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So with Jonathan Taylor, I still think that he can be someone that you can go out and acquire, because I put out on Twitter on Sunday, I said, like, all right, guys, what are we feeling here with Jonathan Taylor? What are our thoughts? And everyone was like, I'm spite dropping him. I'm dropping him, and it's like, don't do that. But everyone's down. His value is so freaking low right now. So if you can go and acquire him for dirt cheap, maybe flip Nyheim Hines for Jonathan Taylor. Like, I'm fine doing that because we've seen Nyheim Hines explode already once this season and then go back to doing nothing. So I think he's still someone that you can, I don't want to rely on him, but I think adding him is a smart move.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, look, I roster Taylor in a couple of leagues. I'm not trading him. just because I'm not going to get the offers that I think need to go. And the schedule after this week is really solid for running backs going forward. So if he can kind of reclaim that role, that's fine. But yes, I was mildly, to the extent I get fired up, mildly fired up about that because Tags has correctly been basically saying Taylor just doesn't look good. He just runs into the line. I agree with that. But again, like we said, it's the usage. And even if you've watched his games, for the most part, he always has the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter. That's actually when he has produced from a yards per carry basis. It's always because in the third or fourth quarter, he has suddenly a 12-yard run, a 20-yard run, something like that, because he needs the work to, A, get into a groove, B, wear down the defense, and they don't let him, and it's really frustrating.
So here's really quick, with Jonathan Taylor, too, and this, think about Jonathan Taylor as far as a runner and what we've seen on tape. Think of him in the same vein as you would of Derrick Henry. Now, I'm not calling, from a physical standpoint, nothing like that. But yet, that's kind of what we need to be. So you'll watch tape on Derrick Henry. He runs into the back of his line sometimes. Sure, he doesn't pick up 3 yards every single run, but yet what he brings to an offense is you give him the ball 20-plus times, and the defense can't stand hitting a 6'4", 240-pound running back that many times in a game. So he continually wears down a defense, and then by that point, when you get to the third or fourth quarter, that's when he can break off some of these big runs and pick up the chunk gains. So that's kind of the same way that Jonathan Taylor needs to be utilized. I don't know if he's going to be utilized that way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We can't have faith that the coaching staff is going to use him. But that's exactly right. That's how you should be. It's like when I play football, one-on-one football with Will, my 7-year-old son. Yeah, he may tackle me for the first 30 plays pretty easily. But by the end, because I'm 150 pounds heavier than him, I just push him out of the way. That's what they need to be doing with Jonathan Taylor. Get in on that. So look, I know you have him ranked. Did you say between Zeke and Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yeah.
That's exactly where I have him as of right now. So that's actually pretty funny. So I can give you some names. Let's talk about this. But I think I know how you're going to come out on this. Taylor, because these are the most searched for player. Taylor or David Johnson?
I'll still take Taylor.
Taylor or James Robinson?
I'll take Robinson. I have Robinson all the way up at 6 rest of the season.
Yeah. I have him at 5th. It's funny, there's somebody who we've moved down because you have Connor and Robinson. We have one spot down from each one of us. Let's go with Taylor or Myles Gaskin.
I will still take Taylor there.
Okay, so I'm going to name a couple other guys. I assume based on what you're saying right now that you would prefer Taylor over all these guys. Let me know if this is wrong in any. I'll list them all. You let me know if any are wrong. Taylor versus J.K. Dobbins versus Melvin Gordon versus Zach Moss versus Ronald Jones versus Damien Harris and versus Phillip Lindsay.
I will still take JT over all of those.
Right. That's what I assumed. But that, I think, is very indicative of what you're going to see. People are searching for those trades. Yeah. People are searching for, should I trade Jonathan Taylor for Damien Harris? Some people are just off. Okay, because they don't want a piece of this. Some people love Wilkins, you and I don't. I wish you were on yesterday because, man, Derek Brown and Tags were just beating me up pretty good. But I agree with you. So go out. If you are looking, if you're a little more optimistic on him, you can probably acquire him for cheap. Let's go cross position here, Yates, because, again, this was a very search for player. Would you prefer Taylor or Antonio Brown?
Oh, man. I'll still take Taylor there because he's a running back and because I'm assuming that you don't need Antonio Brown. But, man, it would be very tempting to swing for the fences with Antonio Brown.
All right, how about Taylor, last one, or Allen Robinson?
I'll take Allen Robinson there.
Yep, I'm in agreement with you. I would probably take Taylor there. Although, look, I admit this is what's funny, man. I'm not trading Jonathan Taylor on my team unless I get an offer in the range of what we're talking about. At the same time, I'm not I am confident. I feel good that this guy, there were some guys like Joe Mixon early in the season. We felt more confident that he was going to turn it around. Right. Even Kenyon Drake, we were a little concerned because of the injury, but we still figured absent injury, he's going to have value. I don't know whether or not that's going to be Jonathan Taylor. Right. I really, really don't, but I'm still willing to hold him to find out, which is why I would probably hold him.
And the difference there, the difference there between those two, because I know we're going to have people come at us talking about that. The difference between Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake and then us being less confident on Jonathan Taylor was the volume. It was the volume that Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake were still seeing that caused us to say, okay, keep buying in. on these two. This is why you keep starting Joe Mixon, right? Kenyon Drake, we were a little bit more concerned because of the injury, like you said. But then Jonathan Taylor, if he's the third in running back touches on his team, coming out of a bye against Detroit, that's super concerning.
Yeah. Again, at the same time, look, Jordan Wilkins has been in the league for 3 years. He couldn't beat out Marlon Mack. I just don't think it's suddenly going to be like, wow. Again, Derek Brown really liked him. So he was very much like, I've been a truther since the beginning. So if that's where you are, that's fine. But I do not think that they're like, we're a playoff team. We're going to turn this over to Jordan Wilkins.
Right.
All right, let's get into some buy low and sell high. Just give me one. Let's start with buy low. Give me one buy low candidate.
I'm going to go Robby Anderson. You're looking at he hasn't really produced in the top tier way that we were kind of expecting him to early on in the season and what we had grown accustomed to, but yet he's still seeing consistent targets in this offense. 8 targets each of the past 2 weeks, 6 for 74 in week 7 and 5 for 48 last week against Atlanta. And we saw that, and we saw Curtis Samuel be the one who scored multiple times there. So I still think that Robby Anderson can be viewed as a consistent wide receiver too, but I think his value is plummeting because people are looking at the stats here and going, he hasn't really done much for me recently. So I think if you can go out and acquire Robby Anderson for a little bit, or you can get him super low, super cheap right now, I would go do that.
Yep. I love that call. Yeah, it's because I think a guy like Robby Anderson, when you have a guy, I think, who fantasy managers come into the season not particularly high on, right? They look for a reason to validate that original feeling, even this late in the season. We're at week 9. Still, at this point, they look for a reason to be like, see, I mean, this was just fluky. This doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's not. I completely agree with you. Right now, I'm 18th rest of season. Solid wide receiver, too. I agree with you that the perceived value is less than that. So I would definitely go and buy low there. I like it. For me, a guy I'm not sure of, he's definitely, for me, if you can buy low, I would. I'm just not sure he's a buy low candidate because I'm not positive of how fantasy managers are feeling about this. But if I could, I would buy low on Mark Andrews. It seems like people are a little bit frustrated. Now, you just lost George Kittle probably for the season, so reliable tight ends are few and far between. But, I mean, his season high is 58 yards on the year. He's got 32 yards or fewer in 4 of 7 games. The Ravens have a great schedule for tight ends. Now, they haven't played well. Lamar Jackson is not playing well as a passer right now, but I think things are going to get better. And if people are starting to kind of lose faith and being like, man, why did I spend a 3rd-round pick on this guy who's not really producing for me each and every week? I need him to score a touchdown. Then I think if he's a guy who you can buy low on, I would look to do that. Now, again, I'll say I've moved Darren Waller ahead of him in my rest of season rankings. So I will say that. So Andrews is 3rd. He was 3rd before, but it was behind Kittle. I've moved Waller ahead of him, but he's still my 3rd tight end. And he is somebody who I think I would love to do this rather than you and I talking every single week about which mediocre waiver wire tight end are we going to try to pick up to try to stream this week. So if you can buy low on him, I would. I don't know how you feel about Andrews.
I'm very confused as to how to feel about Mark Andrews because I've got him in a couple of spots and he's hurting my lineup. Based on his just unpredictability, and it kind of goes to Lamar Jackson, right? Everything kind of comes back to Lamar Jackson and him struggling as a passer. And you look at Mark Andrews' tight end finishes. I mean, week 1, he scored twice, and he finishes the tight end 1. Then weeks 2 and 3, he doesn't score. He finishes as the 30 and 35th tight end. Week 4 and 5, he scores multiple times, and then he scores 3 times in that time frame. Finishes as the tight end 3 both weeks. Then doesn't score again in weeks 6 or 8 and finishes as a 30th and 22nd tight end. So if he's the Marquise Brown of tight ends. If he doesn't score, then you're not going to be happy that you started him. So he just comes with this super unpredictable. I mean, he's seeing the targets too, which is so frustrating, but he's just not producing.
So this is what I'm saying. This is perfect. You are somebody who rosters Mark Andrews. I can feel the frustration just coming out of you right now. So he is somebody who I think, given their remaining schedule, given the fact that if you are rostering Mark Andrews, you kind of needed to expect this coming in. You needed to expect that there is going to be some ups and downs because that's just kind of what it was last year. And maybe you thought it would get better because you had no Hayden Hurst. Maybe his snap percentage would go up in that first game when he played such a high percentage of snaps, especially. You were like, oh boy. But in the end, this is still a guy, one of the few guys I think who you're rolling out there confidently each and every week, despite the fact that, again, his schedule is good coming up for tight ends pretty much for the remainder of the season. So I would go out and acquire him. But this is good. You're making my point. This is if other fantasy managers feel the way Yates does, which is, again, totally understandable, I would go out and make some offers. Let's go to sell high, Yates. Who do you got here?
Mike Evans. You love it. Welcome to the third week in a row where I talk about Mike Evans in the sell high section here. No, I mean, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin coming back into the lineup. He scored. If he didn't score this past, yesterday, then I don't think you would have been able to sell him super high. But yet, because he did score and because he's been scoring relatively consistent, then I think that you can sell him and sell him for, again, these guys that we talked about. So, yeah, I'm looking to get Mike Evans off my roster. And, again, I think I can get a proven wide receiver, too, with, some upside there.
Yeah, we talked about it. I think you can get that, and I have absolutely no problem doing it. It's just real. Look, again, even this was a great game for Evans. That catch in the end zone. Again, also, by the way, capitalize on good performances on national TV. Okay?
Oh, because big time.
Right? I mean, and the touchdown catch was gorgeous. A gorgeous catch. Capitalize on that. 5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown when he was legitimately the only game in town. I mean, Scotty Miller did not get involved almost at all. He left a little bit. Legitimately the only game in town. 5 for 55 and a touchdown. Go ahead and sell him for wide receiver 2 value. I agree with you. My sell high, I'm going to be interested to see whether or not you agree with this one, Yates, because this dude is awesome. Completely agree. I'm not looking to sell. It's only sell high. And it's Stefon Diggs. Now, I would wait until after this week when they play Seattle because I have a feeling this is going to be a monstrous game for Stefon Diggs. He's a number 6 receiver on the season. He leads the NFL in targets. That's all great. It's really not a great schedule, especially for number 1 wide receivers coming up after this, either because the teams he's playing against generally limit wide receivers, or they have a shutdown cornerback who's capable of shadowing a wide receiver, like Arizona. Then they have a bye, which, by the way, understand, when you have not passed your bye week yet, that's a big deal. You need to think about that in terms of your rest of season rankings because it is hard to fill out a roster. Then the Chargers, 49ers, who may mail it in, again, who knows, Steelers, Broncos, Patriots. Generally, it's just not a great schedule for number 1s. And a bigger thing is, man, Josh Allen, as much as Diggs continues to produce, Josh Allen is really looking like the 2019 version of Josh Allen. Do not give him away. But he is valued right now by fantasy managers, I think, as like a strong wide receiver 1. If you can sell him at that value for, something like an RB1 or something like that, I would do that personally, even though, again, it hurts a little bit because Diggs is great. And again, not sell, just sell really, really high if you can.
I don't hate the call. I'm never going to be opposed to selling high on someone unless it is like a guy who just is so freaking consistent, like a Devontae Adams or Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey. Like those kind of guys. Like, you don't sell high because where are you going to go? But with Stefon Diggs, it is kind of the same question of like, okay, where are you going to go? Like, looking at, I don't know if you're going to be able to sell Stefon Diggs for a DK Metcalf. I don't know if you're going to be able to sell Stefon Diggs for an AJ Brown, who I have slightly above him in my rankings. I have Stefon Diggs at 10 rest of the season in my wide receiver rankings, and there's some guys above him, but I don't know if the fantasy manager is going to move off of him for Stefon Diggs, or in the running back rankings, with the way that it looks right now, I don't know who you're going to get.
Yeah, all right, so let me ask you this, okay? If you have a needy team, would you prefer Stefon Diggs or James Robinson?
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you that.
James Robinson for me. It's James Robinson. Although I guess the one thing I will say about Robinson is I need to see what it looks like right now with the rookie. Right. I may want to. How about Stefon Diggs? How about Stefon Diggs or James Conner?
I would take James Conner.
Yeah. So would I. I think you could do that because again, I think that Conner is a guy who, again, a lot of people are going to see the YPC and they're going to be like, whatever, he had 15 for 47 against the Ravens. And I think there's also still this stigma with Conner where, he's brittle because he left that first game.
Sure.
I mean, he's a strong RB1. I think you can do that. That's the type of thing that I would make. I think Conner's value is higher. I think Diggs' perceived value because Diggs has been phenomenal and is one of the great route runners in the game. He's an awesome talent. But this is where I think if you can value him as like a top 6 wide receiver, which he's not that far off. You have him 10th. I think I might have him 9th or 10th or something like that. It's a real sell high, which is basically, I think you can maybe get anybody you want other than, again, if you're talking about DeAndre Hopkins or or DK Metcalf,
Right.
maybe not there, maybe not Kamara, maybe not Derrick Henry, maybe not Dalvin Cook now, you might be able to get anybody else. Like, legitimately, I think, given the value that I see placed on Diggs. That's what I mean, by the way. By sell high, I'm stressing it for like the 8th time. Hold Diggs if you have him, only if you can get a boatload for him. Or again, or something where you can pair him with somebody for, Kamara or something like that. All right, let's get to risers and fallers here, Yates. Let's start with your running back. Give me a riser or two or however many you've got.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at the running back risers here, Antonio Gibson rising slightly, coming off of his bye, so he didn't have a chance to move a ton, right? But yet, when we saw, one, a lot of running backs fall down my rankings this past week, but then two, just with the way that he looked last week, the way that he was heavily involved, I think that he's still not someone that I'm willing to trust as a low-end RB1, high-end RB2, because how many games are Washington actually going to be leading the way that they were against Dallas, which is where he got the majority of his work. And I think that you're going to see J.D. McKissic start to factor if in those games as a pass catcher that they're trailing, which I expect more often than not. But yet, Antonio Gibson, as I have him at 17 right now, and that's a riser compared to where he was, what we were feeling just a couple weeks ago. So I did want to mention Antonio Gibson as someone who is rising up my rankings.
Yep, I think he's 18th for me rest of season, so that's good. For me, the guy who has risen the most, I mean, J.K. Dobbins is a riser for sure. We've talked about him a little bit already because I do think that you watch him with the ball, and he just tags on talked about it.
So good.
It just looks like he's shot out of a cannon. So and that team needs to start winning. I mean, they're falling now behind Pittsburgh even more. But the guy I think who had the actual biggest jump in between their rankings before this week and after this week was Damien Harris. Now, I get that you've got Sony Michel, who's going to come back at some point. I get that it's the Patriots, but they're not going to be throwing the ball ever because they have nobody to throw the ball to, and they can't really throw the ball. And Harris looked pretty good. I get that it was against Buffalo, but I'd had him, and this might have been me having him too low. I was just basically like, I'm off every Patriot. I don't want to roster any Patriots. So I had him 50th coming in my running back rankings, and he's jumped to 35th. So that's a huge jump for me for a season. So where do you have Harris rest of season?
I have him at 29.
Okay. But he was then closer to that even before this week?
Yeah.
Or is he somebody who also
he was in the
mid
mid-30s because, again, it was hard to find some of these guys that I was willing to put him above, or, put above him just because with all the injuries and stuff like that. So, yeah, Damien Harris, though, definitely with the way that he's looked, definitely deserves to be considered as a mid-range RB3. The other guy that I would mention is obviously Leonard Fournette, but I think that goes without saying.
Yep. All right, let's go to an RB faller. Who do you got?
Jonathan Taylor. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which are two. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. Taylor, just put the number on it since we talked about him. Where was he before this week? Where is he now?
I had Jonathan Taylor as like a top 8 option, and he fell to 15. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire I had also as a top 10 option. He fell to 16.
Okay. All right. I have no problem with that. Now, I already had Edwards-Helaire where basically he is now, like 15th. But Taylor for me also, I was right there with you, man. I had him 7th. He's 14th now. Zeke, of course, continues to fall. You had already made that leap. I had not yet made that leap. I have now made it. A couple other guys who fall. Part of it is just, that Nick Chubb is coming back. But Kareem Hunt has fallen, pretty far. Also because he just hasn't made the most of his opportunities, even when he's been in there. It's been... right now, I have him 16th, but my guess is I'm going to move him down further. Again, he was pretty high right now because of the uncertainty with Chubb and because of the fact that I expected him to dominate this past matchup. Right now, he's 16th. My guess is when I'm done with it, it's going to be closer to like 20th or 21st. Where do you have Hunt right now, Russ?
I have him at 13. But I had him really high. But then now with factoring in that Nick Chubb is supposed to be coming back, with the way that he's looked, I can definitely make the case. I mean, would you rather have David Montgomery or Kareem Hunt right now on your roster?
That legitimately, when I said that, I was looking at my rest of season rankings. I said he'll probably fall like 20th. It's because that's the spot right behind David Montgomery. And I think, I'm not sure on that. I need to really kind of dive deep into it. And again, we need to make sure how I rank him right now may not be exactly how I rank him in a few days. If I know that Chubb is coming back, then I might move him down further. But it really was just kind of disappointing. And it wasn't that he wasn't getting, 20 touches a week. It's just he didn't look that good. And Tags always brought up the point, whatever it is, that he hasn't rushed for more than 84 yards in a game or whatever it is. So right now he's 16th. I'm going to do a deep dive into this afterwards, and I'll let you know where I wind up with him. But yeah, he's still going to be an RB2. He's going to be a guy you're going to start, but think I might have Montgomery one spot ahead, but we'll see where I end up on it. Another follow for me was Melvin Gordon, just because Phillip Lindsay not only returned, but also looked like the better back, right?
Yep.
So, again, Gordon's not off the radar for me, but he was 24th. He's down to 29th right now. Still a guy who you're starting most weeks, but more as a flex option for me. Let's go to a wide receiver riser. Yates, who do you got?
It's a great question. I'm flipping over. If you have yours, go ahead.
I do, yeah. I'll start. Yeah. I've got two guys who have risen up pretty significantly. Biggest one is Corey Davis, and I talked with Tags about him on Sunday night. I liked him, especially this week coming in, but he is a guy who just has produced whenever he's been in the lineup this year. There's no questions asked. Either a touchdown or he gets you the yards. He's always getting targeted. He was 52nd coming in. Tags had him like 60th. He was what's your problem, man, on Sunday night. I had him 52nd. Right now, in my original sweep, I have him 39th. Because, again, that's not crazy. He's still outside wide receiver 3 range, but that's up 13 spots from where he was. So he's a guy who moved up significantly. The other guy was Mike Williams, who, again, it's been really tough for me to put a value.
So frustrating.
It's been almost impossible to put a value on Mike Williams because I'm like, oh, this is a good game. Let's bump him way up rest of season rankings. Oh, wait, he's not targeted anymore. All right, he's got to go way down. Wait, this is why I've been trying really hard not to react too much to what happens game by game with the Chargers. In the end, where I'm coming down on this is that he's going to be kind of boomer bust. So he's not going to be a guy who I'm jonesing to start every single week. But he is a guy who I think I'm probably just going to kind of leave in that wide receiver 3 range and just say I'll probably start him each and every week and I'll deal with the duds.
Yeah, Mike Williams is back-to-back, or right in front of Chase Claypool. And that's, I think, the exact same way that we need to be viewing Claypool.
Yep. I have him 2 spots out of Claypool, so I agree with you. Anybody else who moved up for you this week, or you want to go to
No, I'll mention Corey Davis, like you said. Corey Davis, of course, moved up. I'm doing a Reddit AMA right now, and I've got a couple questions of, like, can we trust the Corey Davis breakout? And based on what we're seeing, I mean, we have to buy in. Now, I'm not ready to call him a top 24 wide receiver or anything like that, but yet when you're not seeing Jonnu Smith take away targets, when he's barely running routes, and now you have, A.J. Brown is still, fantasy relevant and everything. Corey Davis is producing. So he's at 41 in my wide receiver rankings. He did move up from just inside or just outside top 50. And then the other one that I'll mention, T. Higgins, just continues to climb on my rankings, man. This is a future star in the making, and I think that not only just a future star, I think he's a star right now.
Yep, he actually was the third guy if I was going to go down to 3. So we are simpatico right now with our risers. What about our fallers? You got anybody in mind, or you want me to go first?
Mike Evans obviously just, kind of plummets here or there. Amari Cooper continues to just drop down my rankings. I don't know how far I can really drop him before I start to be like super upset with myself. But yeah, those are the main ones, Cooper particularly.
Yeah, I haven't had anybody crazy. Like, I didn't go nuts with moving guys down this week. Marquise Brown continues to fall. Now, I know he's making noise about the fact that he wants to get more involved, but he's a guy who slowly just been moving down because the targets are not there yet for him. And Justin Jefferson. And again, this was, I think, a case of me being a little more bullish than I probably should have been. I'm not overreacting to this one game, but it is something where I think I had him and Thielen way higher, I think, than probably consensus. So I still have Jefferson as a wide receiver 2, but more of a low end right now. I kind of really bought in. Nothing crazy, though, with those 2 guys. How about, look, I do not have crazy QB risers or QB fallers this week. I don't know if you do, if you've moved anybody significantly from week 8 to week 9.
The 2 guys that I'll mention here, Joe Burrow is a riser. Joe Burrow just continues to rise up my rankings, and, he's a solid QB1 for me now. He's at 8 right now in my rest of the season quarterback rankings. I think that we just need to view him. The Baltimore game, I think, is putting this kind of damper on his, season-long outlook. If he didn't have that game, I think we'd be saying Joe Burrow was a top 5 fantasy quarterback, just from the perspective. But so I think he's now in this area where no matter the matchup, you plug him into your lineup and you just deal with it. I'm not going to be dropping Joe Burrow to pick up a streaming quarterback if he has a rough matchup. And then the guy who's falling, Lamar Jackson. Even though he had 16 rush attempts this past game, he really did nothing with it. He's looking shaky as a passer. I said going into this game, I'm projecting Lamar Jackson to struggle as a passer, and he did. And that's just kind of what we're seeing throughout this entire season. He is no longer this boom, quarterback that gives you the week-winning, performances. He's the quarterback 14 on the season. Like, I think we just need to bump him down. So he's at 9 in my rest of season quarterback rankings.
Wow, that is big, man. That is big. I can't really disagree with you that much because there are a lot of quarterbacks right now that I think I just feel more comfortable with than Jackson. Now, I have not bumped him down quite that much. A guy who I have bumped down is Allen for the reasons that I've talked about here.
Fair.
I just that with the passing, regression going on. And by the way, Zach Moss is, even though Allen scored the rushing touchdown, Moss is getting carries from within the 5 and stuff like that. And as he emerges, that could take away from Allen's value. I don't have Lamar Jackson that low, but I do agree that he is slowly falling down my rankings. And again, no real big risers. I do like the Burrow call, though. Again, yeah, he's just great. He's just a guy you can throw out there each and every week. How about your tight ends right now? Anybody moving up the board this week?
Moving up is TJ Hawkinson and Rob Gronkowski.
Yep.
Hawkinson performing well in a tough matchup, one that I had him down in my weekly rankings, but he's been so consistent this year. You look at his fantasy finishes. The worst that he's finished on the season is the tight end 19, and that was still in a game where he had 4 receptions for 62 yards. It was just a good week for tight ends. So he has been just producing for you. He's been finding the end zone, hasn't hurt your fantasy lineup. So he's now all the way up at 3 for me with the George Kittle injury. I have him above Mark Andrews. Then Rob Gronkowski, as we continue to see him become more acclimated to this offense, getting back into game shape, he's been dominant. He's been someone that you can plug into your lineup. The past 3 weeks, 6, 2, and 4 are his fantasy finishes. So he's just been a locked-in top-tier tight end.
So where do you have him on your tight end?
I have Hawkinson at 3 and Gronk at 4.
Wow. Okay. Very good. Hawkinson was the guy for me. Absolutely. And again, all the points you mentioned, correct. The other big thing, Galladay is
right.
At minimum out this week. Probably going to go on IR and probably out a few weeks with his hip injury. I think the person who benefits the most from that is Hawkinson. Marvin Jones, of course, but I'm not ready to trust Marvin Jones.
Right.
Hawkinson, I think, gets a bump up in the targets there. How about a tight end faller for you?
Jonnu Smith.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Are you okay? Where is he going, Yates? How far down?
I've got him still at 7, but I had him at 4 previously. Mm-hmm. So this is we've got to move him down. The Titans are not utilizing him the way that they should. He's barely running routes. The past few weeks he's been running like 12 or 11 routes per game. I haven't seen the numbers on this past week's yet, but it's not great. And he's getting taken off the field on third downs. Like, they're just not utilizing him the right way. So for everything that I have been known as the Jonnu truther, like, I'm going to be real and I'm going to say like that we can't trust him as a locked and loaded tight end 1 every single week, based on Anthony Ferkser getting, targets. Like, what the heck are we doing out here? What's going on? Like, so I'm hoping that Jonnu Smith leaves in free agency this next year, goes somewhere that will actually utilize him and utilize his talents as a receiver. But man, this is just not great.
And to be clear, not great equals 7th, right? That's what you said,
right? Like,
yeah, me too. I'm not making you defend that because that's for me too. He has fallen down my rankings. I didn't have him 4th, but he has slowly fallen down. But still, when I look at the other options, I'm like, I don't know how far I can really move him down at this point, just based on what we've seen. So I agree, he's a faller, but let's not go crazy. Still definitely a tight end 1, still a guy who, if you roster, you're starting each and every week. Ready to finish up with the listener mailbag here, Yates?
Yeah.
All right, let's start it. From T. Leps, Robert Tonyan or Hunter Henry rest of season?
Hunter Henry for me.
Yeah, I've got Henry higher as well. From @Flyers828, is it time to drop Mike Davis and or Rashard Higgins?
I'm not ready to move off of Rashard Higgins yet, not after 1 week. I think if you have like a locked and loaded option that you can pick up off the waiver wire, sure, do that. But yet, in a vacuum, I'm not going to drop Rashard Higgins. He's still a starting wide receiver on an NFL team. But this was a weird game too with just the weather. I'm not ready to, completely just move off of Higgins. But with Mike Davis, with Christian McCaffrey expected to be back in the lineup this week, I think that you can move on from Mike Davis if you absolutely have a better option available on the waiver wire. I don't know if you're going to. So that's just kind of the thing. This is the week, though, that I think we move off of Mike Davis.
Yeah, I would try to hold Mike Davis if I can, just because, again, we talked about how the fact like Tony Pollard isn't really this great high-end handcuff anymore, but Mike Davis kind of takes the place of him, and we were always advocating holding on to guys like that. So I would hold on to Mike Davis if I could, but really I do not expect much production just as a handcuff. As for Higgins, it's a bye-week wide receiver who's like borderline startable. And of course, he disappointed in this wind game this past week. So I'd be okay.
Fair. Forgot about the bye week this week. That's a great call.
Yeah. If you have to, But if I'm not opposed to holding on to him because I do think he is going to have value rest of the season despite this game. From Ed Murray Media, if you wanted to handcuff James Conner, would you rather pick up Snell or McFarland?
I would personally prefer to pick up Benny Snell. I think Anthony McFarland is more of the long-term outlook as the pass catcher and spark plug for this offense. I doubt that he receives the majority of the carries.
Yep, I agree with you. Snell would be the guy for me. From Jason McFarlane, would you pick up Jordan Reed if you had to replace George Kittle? The one caveat I'll give right now is it is Tuesday. I know Reed is practicing. I don't know if he's going to be activated by Thursday, but generally speaking, do you think long-term Jordan Reed is a good pickup to replace George Kittle?
Yeah, so I've gotten a lot of questions about this, and this is the issue. We just don't have clarity yet on Jordan Reed. He's ahead of schedule, but yet if he played on Sunday, would that be something where we see him activated? If it's a Thursday game, man, I just don't know if we're going to see him plugged into the starting lineup. So I'm not ready to – I'll add Jordan Reed if I have the space and, to potentially deal with the range of outcomes here. But if I need a tight end this week and someone like Eric Ebron is available on my waiver wire, I'm going with Ebron.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Reed is probably going to produce when he is in the lineup, but of course you have the crazy injury risk that the poor guy has, and It's not clear that he's going to be able to play by Thursday. So if you want to add him, that's fine, but again, like you, there are other streaming options that I'd probably prefer. At Jasmine SN asks, are there any defenses with good playoff matchups who you would stash now? I took a look at this one, Yates, because it's a little tough, I think, for you to get off the top of your head unless you do have any.
Please answer that
please
one
look
for
at the
me.
schedule. First of all, if you're already stashing defenses for the playoffs, kudos to you, my friend, because you are doing very well in your fantasy league. And again, things probably will change. I don't really think it's worth it to do this because we have no idea. Look at the 49ers right now. They might be a great matchup, right, who you go against. The ones that stood out to me that are not probably almost universally rostered right now is Cleveland. They do get the Giants and the Jets in weeks 15 and 16, so that should probably provide some fantasy goodness. And the Cardinals get the Giants, the Eagles, and then the 49ers, which, again, that might be a good one as well for your playoff run. But those are really the two that stuck out to me as defenses. When I looked at who's highly rostered right now, those two were pretty widely available. And so if you are stashing for them, I might go there. From Brian Bevan, would you prefer Melvin Gordon or Phillip Lindsay rest of season?
Melvin Gordon still for me because I think he gets the goal line opportunities. Phillip Lindsay to score is going to have to break away a long play like he did this past Sunday. So I'll still take Melvin Gordon, but both of them are kind of in that mid-range RB3 territory.
Yeah, that gap is closing, but I agree with you. I would prefer Gordon. Last one from Leo Abanagas. Would you prefer Miles Sanders or Joe Mixon rest of season, and why? He doesn't just want the answer, Yates. He wants you to explain why.
Yeah, they're back-to-back in my rankings. So both of them obviously have the injury concerns. We don't know when exactly they're going to be back. I am projecting that both of them will be back this week until I hear otherwise. So, it didn't sound like these were super, super serious injuries. So if that's the case, I'm going to go with the offense here. I'm going to go with Cincinnati. Looking at Philadelphia's offense, yeah, Miles Sanders is going to see some work, but you also have Boston Scott, who stepped in nicely. He could take away some touches. Once Joe Mixon comes back into the lineup, in a good offense, he's going to see 20-plus touches every single week as a floor, and Giovanni Bernard's not going to factor in. So I think that this is something where I'm going to give the slight edge here to Mixon, but that's, again, like I said, those guys are back-to-back in my rankings at 11 and 12 in my running back rankings.
Patented Harris shoulder shrug on this one. Legitimately 1A, 1B. I'd probably prefer Mixon slightly rest of season for those reasons, but it's not a huge divide. All right, that is it for today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Yates and I are going to be doing a waiver wire live stream in like an hour, and he's doing a Reddit AMA as we speak. The guy is multitasking. We'll be back tomorrow with our Start-Sit show. We will talk to you then.
Thank you for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments section below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.